Welcome back to Marvel Good Yay, the spin-off of the Geek Easy Podcast, where we're going back and watching all of the MCU films to discuss them leading up to the release of Avengers Endgame. I am Pixel Dan.
Jonathan Leonard.
And Jaron McCaffrey.
That got really intense there.
Yeah, you did. That's because you're so excited to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp.
I am amped.
You're amped. So you're that was bad.
That was really bad.
I was really pushing it right. That was
man.
It reaching.
I'm really excited because I just think these movies are so fine.
So fine.
Yeah.
They're
I resent this movie for existing.
Do you?
A little bit.
Oh boy, I can't wait to hear about it.
I mean, I need it to exist because I need something to absorb all my post Infinity War angst.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
But like that's for sure what this is. This is for sure the diva match between the pre WrestleMania main event and the WrestleMania.
Did you say the
main
same
event.
thing about the last Ant-Man?
I think so, man.
I think you called it the diva match too.
Well, it came between Ultron and Civil War.
Did we ever explain that? I always feel like we should explain. So that people aren't just like, why don't they like the girl wrestlers? Because that is not what that means at all.
So there used to very much be a thing. You can go back and see it on old WrestleManias.
Yeah.
They would put a match out there, and it became a running gag with us that we called it. We referred to it as the Diva match because there was a very long stint where it was the Diva match. So you would have a really big match, Triple H versus The Undertaker. Then they would throw a Diva match out there to bring the crowd down.
It's totally like a cool down match.
Yeah, it's a cool down match. So you go refill your popcorn or your beer, go to the bathroom, whatever during this match, so that then you can come back for The Rock versus Austin.
And bear in mind, this was before that they were taking the women's division seriously, and before the women who were doing it were taking wrestling seriously.
Yes, this was very much in the era of the supermodels who were running around in skimpy clothes.
Yeah, which is why it's the Diva match and not a women's match.
Exactly, which is why it's the Divas match.
Yeah, it's very, very specifically the Divas.
So now that's been explained. For anybody that didn't know.
Yeah.
We don't hate women.
In fact, we very much love the women wrestlers there right now because they are amazing.
Absolutely.
Highlight of WWE.
But this definitely feels like a movie that they threw out there to just kind of absorb.
Well, it probably is. Honestly, it probably does have a little bit of that going on.
Right.
There's no doubt about it. Because this was the same year as Infinity War. This movie came out, right?
A couple of months after.
Same summer, right?
Just a few months afterwards. So give us the numbers.
Yeah,
there,
this
John.
was July 6th.
Okay,
So April 20-something.
Yeah.
To July. So this is the same time slot that we're going to get between Endgame and
Far From Home.
That's the one.
That's the one. That's it.
Okay, so we don't have a budget for this one either, but
I'm just going to go ahead and project somewhere in the 175. That seems to be about the realm. I don't have a guess on Infinity War.
Yeah.
But this one I could bank on being pretty close to most.
They probably paid more than 175 on the cast for Infinity War.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, man, yeah.
domestic total of $216 million, foreign total of $406 million, grand total of $622 million.
Not their strongest. Makes me wonder what kind of bump they got from Infinity War, because usually the movie that comes after one of these real big ones gets a bit of a bump, which makes me wonder if this is actually way underperforming without that that hitch up there. However, we are where we are, $600 million off of probably a sub $200 million budget. Made some cash.
Yeah.
Continued the Marvel win streak for sure. But nothing impressive like many of the ones that came before and right after.
Mm-hmm. Totally. All right. Where do we want to begin? You've got notes.
Yeah, I got notes.
We can just kind of plow through. We don't have to go.
We don't have to go scene by scene for this one, I don't think.
Well, I want to say beforehand, because I've already badmouthed this movie a lot.
Yeah.
when we're not very far into the podcast.
4 minutes in, Jaren's already told us how he feels.
So when I watched this movie, I sat down and I was just like, and it is this, like, it was a weird kind of, not the same vitriol that I have for Iron Man 2, where I was like, I'm going to assassinate Iron Man 2. right? But I definitely, I sat down and I was like, you know what? I'd only seen it the one time in the theaters, and I was not prepared to give it a second chance at all. I didn't hate it, but so I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna nitpick this movie to death. Turned out to be a little harder to nitpick than I maybe thought it was gonna be. So that's kind of a compliment. Like, I mean, that's like a point in its favor. Like, I'm giving that like some of these.
I would. What I told everybody after I saw this one is if you like the first one, you'll like this one fine. I don't think this is as strong as the first one. I think there's parts that gets way bogged down. However, I think tonally, it's right on track. Spiritually, it's right on track. The stakes are pretty similar. Technically, the stakes are probably higher on this one, but they don't play as well.
Yeah.
So it kind of evens out there. On a spectrum, I put these movies right next to each other, which is not to say they're the exact same movie over. They're not a ton of difference, but
Right.
I just think they're right there. I totally get not caring about this movie. I liked it. I like the Ant-Man movies. They're not my favorites either.
Right.
They'll be pretty low on my list, but I certainly enjoy them. I wouldn't compare them with even an Iron Man 2 or a Thor 2, which are both also movies that I liked fine, just way less than everything else. I would definitely put them both higher than there. I don't understand, like, I feel like if you... I get not caring. I feel like if you go out of your way to dislike this movie, you're looking for a reason to.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I mean, that's what I said.
Fair enough.
So I've spent the last year not caring about this movie, and now we have a podcast to talk about it. So I set out to find reasons not to like it.
Oh, okay. I was under the impression you didn't like it from the get-go.
Man, as close as I can come. I don't even think this movie had the life like Ant-Man is by far not one of my. It's low on my list. I think it sat just above Iron Man 2 and Thor 2 when we did our listing. But I like Ant-Man. I do not think this has any of the life or character that Ant-Man had. All it has Paul Rudd, and it has one scene where, you know, Michael Pena is great. I really felt like it lost a lot of the character, a lot of the life to the movie. You know what I mean? The life to the movie that Ant-Man had.
Yeah,
so
I can see that.
I think this is I think there's a wider gulf than you do. But go ahead.
Well, because they have, I mean, the storyline here is technically a little bit bigger because it comes off the tails of Civil War. It is Scott under house arrest already. We learned that right at the very beginning. Every time he has an incident, the cops come running in. The FBI shows up to check on him, basically. Right at the very beginning, he has an incident where he's got an ankle bracelet that accidentally breaks through a fence on his perimeter.
Right. And
the FBI just raids his house and turns everything over. We do get a neat moment there where his ex-wife and her new husband, the cop who hated him through the entire first movie, show up, and they're very buddy-buddy with him now.
Yep.
Which I thought was cool. But that's kind of the realm it puts us in. But we find out that Hank Pym and Hope Van Dyne are on the run also. Basically, this is all stuff associated with the Sokovia Accords.
Yeah.
So we get that intermix there, and we get alerted.
Because Hank and Hope are in violation of the Sokovia Accords just for having that technology.
Yep.
Which, like, now that I'm saying that out loud and thinking about it right here, like, I didn't even think about it when I was watching the movie, but that puts, like, a really kind of... I think that puts a really kind of sinister vibe to the Sokovia Accord. You know what I mean? Like, that really... So these people have this technology, whether they use it or not. They're in violation of these...
puts you even more on Cap's side.
Man. That's pretty...
Which was, I think, their whole point in the first place when this went down. Because through the whole Civil War thing, nobody was saying, like, look, we shouldn't take any responsibility. But the whole point was like, look, we do this, who knows what's next?
Yeah.
And automatically you see that, kind of flow through here.
That's kind of an interesting realization to have right now. So you mentioned, I'll just jump in here. So you mentioned him kind of being buddy with his in-law, with the new husband.
With his ex-wife,
his ex-wife's new husband. Like, they're all friendly
I don't think
here.
There's just a word for that. I'm sure there will be soon.
Brother, husband. Yeah. That's the wrong implication there. So I complained in Ant-Man because I felt like their hatred towards him was unjustified. I kind of feel like their buddy-buddiness with him is unjustified here. Like, I almost feel like it probably should have been reversed a little bit. You know, like it makes total sense. You know, he stole the Ant-Man suit and went and helped Captain America. I don't know. I was just like, this is weird that they're all buddy-buddy. That's not one of my big nitpicks.
I didn't think super deep
thinking
about it, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a nice contrast there.
I did love the way the wife kept going, telling the FBI like you can't do this and you need a warrant, and the husband the whole time was like, actually they can. Actually, they don't need a warrant.
Yeah.
Like, that was always great.
She's like, really?
Yeah. So we also, at the beginning, we get the flashback to Hank and Janet.
Right.
Taking down that missile.
Which was a callback from the first Ant-Man, but it's more elaborated this time.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's Hank telling Hope about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which was one of the big points in Ant-Man, is that she never knew what happened
Right.
to her mom.
And this is one of those things that, so this is a nitpick that bugs me.
Bugs.
Oh, jeez.
This bugs me in lots of movies like this. Why don't both suits have wings? That seems like a super useful, you know what I mean? And and there's even a moment later where Scott kind of calls him out on that. He's like, I guess you didn't have the wings and the blasters when I wore the suit. And he's like, no, I did. I just didn't put it on there. That makes no sense because before that he was wearing it.
Right.
You know, like, why wouldn't he give himself?
Because he had an ant suit. She had a wasp suit.
Yeah, but that's stupid. But you know, and that happens in lots of movies where, like, you know, there's an upgraded, you know, we get a better technology, and so they upgrade somebody else's suit, but the hero from the first movie or whatever, you know what I mean, is still running around in just plain old. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I see this trope kind of a lot where it's like, man, that suit is way better. Why don't we just make two of those?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And this is one of those where I was like, man, why wouldn't both suits
Hank
just have wings?
likes riding ants.
So it's a preference.
It's a preference.
So if I put the
I won't
if I put the wings on, I won't need to ride the ants anymore, and I really like that.
I look really cool riding this ant.
He does.
It's my battle cat.
You don't want to have the wasp and the wasp too.
The wasp and the wasper.
The wasp and wasper.
Oh no, it's the wasp and the other wasp. What do we do?
So for the record, your argument is breaking down right away because he rides ants with wings.
Yeah.
He could still be.
Did my argument sound like it was supposed to make sense?
I'm sorry, John. I take our podcast seriously.
That's your bad, new guy.
So Scott has the weird dream.
Oh yeah.
He has the dream about Janet.
Well, he like dreams about the quantum realm a little bit,
Yep.
and then he's like in Janet's body while she's playing hide and seek with Hope as a kid.
Yep.
He doesn't know that that's Hope.
He doesn't know it's Janet.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah.
He does know it's Janet.
Does he?
Because
he immediately wakes up and calls.
Yeah, he looks in the mirror and he sees himself as Janet, and then
I didn't think he knew what she looked like.
Well, he does immediately call.
He calls
Hank.
and he's like, "I think I was in your wife, not in a weird way."
Yeah.
And I mean, he knows it was her.
Yeah.
And then they come and pick him up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll just cut right to it on this one.
Totally, yeah. So I like this scene though. It's kind of funny because he wakes up in the car and Hope's driving, and he's like, Hope, and he's like kind of figuring out what's going on, and then he freaks out. He's like, I can't be here. Take me back, because at this point he's only got 3 days left of his probation, right, before he's free again.
I also loved that FBI guy.
Oh man,
Blue?
Yeah. I didn't want to skip over that because that guy comes back a lot in this movie, and he delights me in every scene. Like even in that first one, Scott's going on about how hard it is to entertain a little kid, you know, and he's like, I had to learn close-up magic, and he starts doing this card trick, and they go through the rest of the conversation. At the very end, Woo's like, by the way, Scott, how'd you do it? And he's like, what? It's like the card thing. How'd you do it?
Yeah. And that comes back later too with him.
Yeah, for sure.
The close-up magic thing comes up a couple of times because Bobby Cannavale says something. The husband, the new husband, says something like when they're leaving with the kid, he does a magic trick with the cards where he's like puking them or whatever, and he even stops. He's like, "How'd you do that?"
Yeah. It's like one of the running jokes in this one for sure.
Yeah.
The car's tiny.
Yeah, the car's tiny.
Yeah.
Which I won't nitpick that.
The growing shrinking is a lot more
Advanced.
It's just there a lot more in this movie, right?
It's just the gimmick of the movie.
It's the gimmick of the whole movie. Like now everything shrinks and grows, and grows. Like that's just everywhere now.
Yeah. And I feel like it's used poorly. Like it's clearly such a effect device. It's not even a plot device, you know? Like there are times where it'd be super easy for them to just shrink and drive away, and they don't.
Yeah.
They have a car chase through the city and shrink and rise and shrink and rise and shrink and rise, you know? Like it's just not well used, I don't think. You know what I mean? Like, and there's also times where, man, it'd be really useful if they weren't teeny tiny because they'd get somewhere faster. You know what I mean? Like they're driving 1.5 miles when they're small. They should probably just be big and drive 10 feet.
Right. Yep. I feel that.
So it does seem like they shrink and then like they're still in the middle of a car chase. So I'm like, shouldn't everybody just drive right over you?
Yeah.
You know?
Like where
exactly.
are they at? You just turn away and you're gone.
Yeah. Or even if you're trying to outrun them, wouldn't they just automatically go 1,000 times faster than you?
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
You would shrink and they'd be gone, right?
Because they made that point in Civil War when he was tiny and he was running across that little ladder that should have been one step and it was taking him forever.
Yeah.
You know, and then in this movie they're just like, nope, they're just as fast.
Yeah.
Yep. So we get Scott and Hank reunion, and I love how Hank. There is no point where Hank is not talking down to Scott.
Nope.
And I am crediting Michael Douglas. Like that's just like he just maintains that all the time.
Yeah. And
I think that's a fun. It makes me laugh all the time. Like no matter what he says to Scott, he is talking down to that idiot. So they get reunited. They explain everything about how they're looking for Janet in the quantum realm. They're mad at him because he's the reason they're in trouble.
And that's the thing with this movie is there's a lot of the same spirit. I mean, they try to make it heist-ish because there's always something they've got to get or whatever else. You've got the same characters with similar interactions. It's a fun little spin because, you know, in the first one, Hank basically chose Scott. Still talked down to him plenty, but, like, chose him, needed him. There's something. Now he's essentially betrayed them.
Right.
And so they have a legitimate reason to be mad at them. So they're playing it in a different way, and it is entertaining. But we start to get into this quantum realm stuff, and this is where the movie really starts to drag. For certain. And they'll get into it. They'll get out of it for a quick action scene. They'll get into it. They'll get out of it for some banter. But they spend a lot of this movie doing the MCU world-building thing. Yeah. Which, again, over 20-plus movies, I think we're at 20 with this one. If you're telling a cohesive story and building to something like an Infinity War, or in this case, something like an Endgame, and once in a while you have these movies that are just a ton of exposition, I get it. I'm fine with it. I'm willing to sacrifice a few of these movies being magnificent in lieu of a few of them being okay, and building the rest of that stuff. But this movie's definitely a victim of that because all that quantum realm stuff feels very important.
Right.
And I think going into Endgame, we'll know a lot more once we get out of there.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling a lot of that'll play into this. So technically, the world needs it. But this movie itself is really slowed down by all of it.
Yeah.
I mean, half of this movie is stuff that feels like it should be unnecessary to this movie.
Yes.
Like, there's a quantum realm, somebody's trapped in it. That's all we really need to know. And then they can start to get real science-y with it. And I like seeing Lawrence Fishburne in movies. I think he was a cool addition as the original Goliath.
Yeah.
I thought that was a neat little exchange that he got to have with Scott. He doesn't really get to do much in this movie.
Right.
The bad guy in this movie is never really. I mean, this is one of the weaker.
Yep.
There's no real development there.
Right.
You never really care that much, good or bad. You know, you don't hate her, you don't sympathize with her. She's just sort of there. at times in this movie, she seems overly hardcore. At other times in this movie, she seems overly sympathetic. You're never really sure where you are with her.
Right.
There's just so much going on that the movie sort of gets lost in itself to build this thing to culminate in the fact that, okay, now we have all this quantum realm knowledge that I guess probably maybe we'll find out if we need or not.
Yeah.
But we didn't need this. This movie could have been an hour and 10 minutes without all that stuff and told the exact same story.
Yes.
They just have to stretch it out and bog us down with that stuff, and that's where it gets hurt by it. Now, the stuff in the middle there, I do like. I mean, again, it's still an enjoyable movie. I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad I have all this knowledge going forward if I need it. It's just, man, this is real weighed down.
Yeah. So speaking of the stuff we like in the middle, we go to meet Walton Goggins. I can't remember his name in the movie because I don't care. He's Boyd Crowder.
But yeah, he's Boyd. I'm sure that's his name.
Man, and I'm pretty sure I could watch Walton Goggins read a phone book and be entertained.
Yep.
Yeah.
He is so great, man.
It's one of the. I almost feel bad when there's a few times in the MCU where stuff like this has happened, where I see a guy and I get really excited, and then by the end of the movie, I'm like, man, they could have put anybody in that role and used Walton Goggins for something way bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, he'd be a great villain in like an actual like movie that was about a hero and a villain rather than about a quantum realm that has a hero and a villain swirling near it. You know?
Yeah. Well, and he wasn't even the main villain. He's like
he's like one of those little side
gangsters.
Yeah.
Give that guy some superpowers and let's have him, fight Iron Man or something.
Yeah. I mean, I'm down for whatever. I like Walton Goggins. So she has a little fight so Hope Van Dyne goes in, meets with Walton Goggins. They have a little disagreement because he wants in on the quantum stuff that they're working on. Mm-hmm. She says no, tries to take the thing. She goes back in, fights all his dudes. There was one thing that really stood out to me that I'm going to nitpick, because they do that scene in the kitchen where that guy grabs the knife, throws it at her, and she like shrinks and kind of, Matrix flips around the knife.
Yeah.
And then like 6 more knives come right away. Like who is this thug rapid fire throwing kitchen knives? You're just like shoot. It's just like one of those things. Like, somebody came up with that scene. They didn't care how it got in the movie.
Right. That's like a video game
type
thing with the bad guy just throwing all these knives randomly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So that was
also
done.
throwing kitchen knives ain't that easy.
Yeah. not making him effective like that, right?
Yeah.
So then Ant-Man comes in to help, because there's a bunch of people in there. So Ant-Man comes in to help
with like a prototype suit, right? This is because he doesn't have the suit.
Rebuilding. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Hank gives him the
suit
prototype
that doesn't
suit.
quite work.
Yeah.
And I noticed here. I felt like it was the superhero arrival was noticeably absent. Everyone else kind of gets their moment where it's like, oh yeah, this isn't just Tony Stark running around.
Yeah.
Oh, here's Iron Man.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's Captain America.
Yeah.
Ant-Man didn't get that. He was just like he was just kind of popped up, and all of a sudden he was there, and then they fought Ghost.
Oh yeah, they fought
Ghost. Because Ghost shows up in this scene. So
right.
they fight Ghost for the first time. They're having a conversation at one point, and Scott asks them, I think it's Scott, when he goes, "You guys just put quantum in front of everything?" I swear.
I think that's when they're talking to Goliath.
Yeah, Lawrence Fishburne. I think so. And man, because I was thinking that, I was like, because they were like quantum this, quantum that, and I was sitting there going, man, just this quantum everything's quantum. Guys, I get it. It's all quantum stuff.
Yeah.
And then like.
They do a good job of making Scott very intelligent, but also the audience surrogate.
Yeah. Yep. man, then some stuff happens.
Some stuff happens.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm
next-
having a hard time even just like talking about this one. Like I don't know.
It's rough.
very bland.
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
very bland.
It's got funny
It's-
moments, but it's overall a very bland.
Yeah.
movie.
It's such a sequel, right?
Yeah.
It's like trying to redo the first one, but not really having the first one. You know what I mean? Not
Yeah.
really having the same magic of the first
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
It really is. I think they do a lot of. Excuse me. Yeah, I don't even remember what happens. The next notes I have are at the truth serum.
The truth serum
Oh,
scene.
truth
I wanted
serum
to bring
scene,
that up.
which was-
Yeah, we might as well just jump
because
to that.
Luis is awesome. I love.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah, I mean,
loves him,
you
right?
you find out somewhere in the middle here, like Ghost is basically,
She's out of phase.
yeah, she was the daughter of another person that worked with Hank, and so from her perspective,
Well, he was a
he was another quantum physicist.
Hydra agent, wasn't he?
They don't say that right here, at least.
No?
Later,
Okay.
later on, I don't remember him specifically call him Hydra. In the first introduction, we get to this story. It's from her perspective. So
Okay, yeah, that's right.
So her parents worked with Hank Pym. They had a disagreement, and Hank basically totally discredited him. And so he was trying to get clear his name and get his work back in the realm, and was doing stuff he shouldn't have been doing. Because he had to,
Right.
and there was an accident, and the whole thing exploded and killed both of her parents and left her phasing in and out of reality,
Right.
basically. And so she's stuck there. And so she was found, and
By S.H.I.E.L.D.
was it S.H.I.E.L.D. who did
Yeah,
it?
it was S.H.I.E.L.D.
Okay, so
Yep.
S.H.I.E.L.D. recruited her
S.H.I.E.L.D. recruited her.
and used her as an assassin.
Yes.
Yep.
And they figured out how to, strengthen her to the point where she could stay corporeal a little longer.
She
but
could control it a little bit.
a little
Right.
bit, yeah, but she's always on the brink of just disappearing, essentially.
And also
they
it hurts.
used her as and it hurts.
It hurts,
And they used her as an assassin. They made her do terrible things
Yep.
and kill people and all sorts of stuff that she didn't necessarily want to do. But that's kind of where she was. Now, we get that story again later from Hank's perspective, and Hank says, no, this guy was a traitor. He stole technology. I don't remember them specifically saying Hydra, but you
Maybe.
can almost assume that anybody who is
Right.
stealing this type of technology is Hydra.
And I think I was thinking more about her. She seemed more like the Hydra element in S.H.I.E.L.D. was using her.
Oh, yeah.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
Yeah, that would make sense.
I think
Because actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, if that guy were Hydra, he probably wouldn't have been blackballed.
right.
He would have stolen some stuff and then just went to work for the bank. So he probably wasn't. Now that I'm saying
Yeah,
that, but
shows
she,
how memorable
she
this
was,
movie is.
She, because it was like 2 days ago when I watched
I know.
it.
I just watched it last night.
I have notes.
I know you have notes.
I can't remember this movie.
But that's kind of her backstory there. And again, I mean, it's fine when you lay it out on paper. It sounds like it could be good, but
Yeah.
it's not presented in a way that is compelling.
Right.
It just sort of laid out for like, here it is, and do you care? Not really.
Yeah.
Can Scott say some more funny stuff now?
Yeah.
Paul Rudd, improvise some stuff, please.
Yeah.
Well, truth serum.
Truth serum.
Yeah, the truth serum is great.
It's not truth serum. There's no such thing as truth serum.
Yeah,
Bro,
well,
that's truth serum.
yeah.
It makes you
Yeah.
more pliant. It's a special concoction. Bro, that's truth serum.
The B story is that Scott's security company that he can't ever show up at the office for because he's under house arrest is on the verge of going bankrupt, and Luis is trying to land this big account for them, and at one point, like they figure out they've done something wrong and he needs Scott to help fix it, but Scott's on the run with Hank and Hope, so Scott tells them where they are because they've basically shrunk a lab, taken it to the middle of the woods and grown it. So
Right.
Scott tells Luis where they are. Right at that moment, Walton Goggins shows up with his crew, and one of his crew is good at extracting information. That's when they go through that whole scene you guys just went through there, where they pull this briefcase out, and they're like, "Oh, it's some truth serum." The guy's like, "No, truth serum doesn't exist. This is," and then he describes truth serum,
Yeah.
And so he gives it to
Walks like a duck. Talks like a duck. It's truth serum. But see, this is another example because they give Luis.
Yeah, Luis.
They give Luis the truth serum, and then he goes into one of his Luis stories, which was so amazing in the first movie. But in this one, they're just using it to exposit stuff we already know.
Yeah.
You know, he tells him, like, oh, because he asks him, where's Scott? He's like, oh, well, he's in a real weird place emotionally, and he was in love with Hope, but now he's not in love with Hope, but he wants to be in love with Hope. But, you know, just going through all this, like, we know that.
Yeah.
Like, why are you wasting it? Like, first of all,
I do like the part though when he's in jail and like.
Well, it's always still funny.
Yeah.
To watch, you know, Paul Rudd and Evangeline Lilly and does Hank even do one? You know, to watch them come in and do the Luis.
Luis
Yo,
stuff.
bro.
Yeah.
What about this? You know.
I like when Luis walks in that jail cell though, and he's got like the permed hair, and he's like, "Yo, we're gonna be best friends for life."
Well, I like too. Like he gets going, and Walton Goggins keeps trying to get him on track. Like, no, just tell me where he is. And the other two security guys are sitting back, like, you know, you gave it to him. Now you got to let him run.
Well, they said it's like putting a nickel in the jukebox. Yeah. You got to let the song play, and then he starts talking about how he likes jukeboxes so much.
Well, his aunt used to have that jukebox in her place or whatever. Yeah.
Who was the only artist on there?
Morrissey.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. See, there's some delightful stuff in this movie.
Yeah, totally.
There's some delightful stuff. Although this scene just highlights how they don't get the life. You know, they don't know how to use his story. They don't get what the story is. You know what I mean? Like, the story served a purpose, different purposes every time he did it in the first movie.
Yeah.
You know, in this one, they're just like, oh, Luis has got to do that thing. You know, so they do it.
Yeah.
So then everybody heads out to where Paul Rudd is.
Yeah. Well, the cops show up out there. Paul Rudd leaves because.
Well, first we get that scene with Paul Rudd playing Michelle Pfeiffer, which is great.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So they're trying to pull Janet Van Dyne out of the
quantum realm,
and she like possesses Scott for a minute.
Yeah.
She's got a connection to him because he was down there with her.
Yeah.
Right.
In the first movie.
Yep.
She uses them to fix the coding, right, so that they can pinpoint her.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys are so close, but you need that little nudge. Is kind of what she tells them. Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
His acting there is awesome.
Too, yeah. And I like too, like, because he's standing there trying to do it and nothing's happening, and then all of a sudden it happens, and then like as soon as it dissipates, he's just standing there. He's like, "I'm sorry, I got nothing. I don't know what's going on. How did we get up here?"
Yeah.
And then he realizes he's holding Hank's hand too, because he like holds Hank's hand down. He's like, "Yeah."
But then they have to run and leave, and that's where he leaves because the FBI, because Luis calls him and tells him that the FBI is on their way out there.
Yeah.
And Walton Goggins is on their way out there, and Ghost is on their way out there.
Yeah.
So everybody's converging on this building in the middle of the woods now.
Yeah.
And
they're on the way to his house.
He's got to get home.
He's got to get home to his house, and they've got to get out of there. And they finally go to leave. They shrink the building, and the FBI is already there.
Yeah.
And then there's like a corrupt FBI guy, except he gets, because he's on Walton Goggins' payroll, so he's going to steal the lab, and then he gets knocked out, and Ghost just takes it.
Ghost takes the lab.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Paul Rudd runs home. Wu is back and is starting to ransack the house. Actually, his daughter and ex-wife and their husband had just gotten there. He had been telling them he was sick.
Yeah.
Because they had been calling him, and he's like, I can't move, I'm too sick or whatever. And so the daughter runs upstairs, goes into the bathroom, finds the ant, the giant ant that has been posing as Paul Rudd for the ankle bracelet purposes, basically, in the bathtub.
Yeah.
Immediately figures out what's going on. So she runs down and tries to stop Wu from coming down, saying how sick her dad is and everything like that. And when he brushes past her and finally gets upstairs, and Scott has gotten back and is just walking out of the bathroom pretending to be sick. Which I thought that was a nice little run together that I've seen. Yeah. Every scene with Wu in it I enjoyed. Just because of the way he played, like, hapless, I think is the best way I could phrase it. Like, he wasn't incompetent, he wasn't stupid. But he was definitely owned at every moment.
Right.
Like, and he half knew it. He just couldn't do anything about it, you know?
Well, there was even the one point, I don't remember what he was doing, but he was kind of trying to apologize. He was like, sorry, but I just needed this win.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't remember, so I don't even remember what point that was. But
I think that one might have been here, because there's a couple of times he apologizes to him and tells him he should feel really... This is the one, he's like, but you should feel really good about yourself, even though he just totally screwed over Open Hank again. Yeah. We also get that nice little exchange with him and his daughter,
Yeah,
'Cause
sweet moment.
Yeah, and she's telling him how, he's doing great. He just probably needs a partner. And he's like, yeah, and I really wanted Hope to be my partner, but she hates me now, blah, blah, blah. His daughter's just staring at him like, well, I was thinking me.
Yeah.
And he tells her, I love what he tells her, because he said, oh, honey, you'd be the greatest partner ever, but I'd be the worst dad in the world if I let that happen. You know?
You're the world's best grandma.
We also did get that scene that I thought was really fun. Somewhere in the middle there, they find out they need the old suit to track the lab for some reason.
Yep.
And he's got it hidden in a trophy. He had told Hank it was destroyed, but really he had shrunk it and hidden it in this thing this gift that his daughter had given him. Well, they find out she had taken it to show and tell, so he's got the prototype suit. They're trying to sneak into the school for it, but the suit starts malfunctioning. So at one point it grows him really big, and he's just stuck in this broom closet. And then Hope helps fix it a little bit, so it shrinks him back down to sort of normal size, but then he can't shrink all the way to like ant size. He just shrinks to like smaller Scott size.
Right. Yeah.
So he's probably
Toddler
roughly the
size.
size of what his daughter would be. So he just puts on these like oversized clothes and starts walking through the hall. And at one point, a teacher is like, "Hey, what are you doing, little kid?" And he just takes off running, but he's basically just stuck like dwarf Scott for a little while, which I thought was pretty funny.
That was a clever idea to work into the movie.
Yeah.
When Hank's like, you want a juice box and some string cheese? And he goes, do you really have that stuff?
I like how, like, you could just read your distaste. Like, even when you're complimenting the movie, you're snarling, Jaron.
Don't make me laugh about things in this movie.
Don't make me like this movie. It's been hard enough to nitpick this movie.
Well, we can practically fast forward to the end at this point because everything's sort of set in place here.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're very close to getting Janet back.
Yep.
So I think they have the lab. I don't remember how it got where it was.
Hank goes down to get her. He goes down in to get her.
They have the lab. They go in and they go to get her.
Right.
And at one point, even Lawrence Fishburne is more or less on their side because they have that encounter there. Lawrence Fishburne has been helping Ghost the entire time.
Right.
Try to figure out how because he
helped raise her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He found her, helped sympathize with her, wants to keep her alive, basically. And Hank tells him, look, we've got this bigger thing going on. We've got to get Janet back, but I will help you when this is done. We just got to do this part. So he gets everybody out of the lab. Scott's basically working as a distraction. Like, Ghost thinks he's got something, so they're having a big fight. Meanwhile, Hank is going into the quantum realm. Then they shrink the whole lab and try to move it away, except then it gets stolen back and forth. Right. So the whole time factor they're working against is Hank's got to get to Janet in a certain amount of time, or he'll potentially get lost or whatever. And then B, when he gets back out, they've got to grow the lab back so that that doesn't... I think there's something where you can't get back out until the lab's grown back or something like that. So there's this giant chase scene through... Or were they San Francisco? Or where?
Yeah, it was San Francisco. Yeah.
There's this giant chase
which is kind of a first for the MCU, a big car chase.
No, well, I mean, they had that one in
Civil War.
Black Panther.
Yeah, Civil
War.
Had a car chase. Black Panther had a car chase.
Black Panther
too.
definitely had a car chase.
Civil War had a car chase, right?
Civil War car
Well,
chase?
Civil War, like, they were running through that
Oh, I
tunnel,
guess they were running
and
through the traffic.
Captain America got in the car for a while, and Bucky was on a motorcycle, but
I don't count that one. But
Black
Panther
was
definitely.
A car chase.
Yeah.
Good. Then I don't need
we're ripping up the notes. We're done.
We're not quite done. I still have.
But they go through, and it's another one of those shrinking and growing, and it's a multi-party. It's a bit of a fun scene. It's a little convoluted, and again, I don't connect to the weight of the moment because by now my nose has been bleeding from all the quantum realm stuff.
Well, and it's also and this is also the biggest problem because they're driving all over and they're shrinking and growing and shrinking and growing and throwing stuff at them. Man. If they shrunk down really small, Walton Goggins isn't going to have any idea where they are or how to follow them.
Yeah.
If they just drive away, he's going to be like, where'd they go? Where'd they go? Somebody find them. And they drive to someplace safe, and then they set the thing back up and pull her out. Instead, they have a big crazy car chase through San Francisco, shrinking and growing just because it looks cool.
Yeah.
But it did look kind of cool.
Yeah. They also have that bit going where Scott's suit still doesn't work quite right.
Yep.
So there's like a point where he's like on this big rig truck type thing. Not a big rig, but like a trailer truck. And I don't remember even how they got there because it does get kind of convoluted. But basically he's like bigger, not quite Giant Man big, but bigger. And he's slowing this truck down just by putting his foot on the ground, sitting in front of it. And he gets it to stop, and they're like, Hope's on the comm with him, going, "Okay, we gotta. Walton Goggins has the lab. We got to get to him. You got to hurry up." And he's like, "I'm on my way." And he's trying to figure out what to do, and he basically just starts skating that truck down the street, And so they do some neat stuff there. He catches up with Walton Goggins, who jumps on a ferry, and they do this another Giant Man bit.
Yeah.
Well, first they do the seagull bit, and I have to comment on the seagull bit.
Oh yeah.
Because I feel super vindicated by the seagull bit. So he shrinks down and he needs to jump on Ant to fly out to get on to catch Walton Goggins on the ferry, right?
Yeah.
But as he calls in an ant, a seagull swoops down and eats it.
Yeah.
So then he calls in another ant, and a seagull swoops down, and they do that gag like 7 times.
Yeah.
And I complained in the first Ant-Man because when they shot Anthony, when Anthony died, and they tried to give it like kind of a dramatic, sad moment, I didn't care at all because it was an ant. So I feel super vindicated because they watched that and went, "Look, it doesn't matter at all. Let's just eat a bunch of them right here in this big moment."
Well, even the one that saved him, he got excited and named it, and then it got eaten away. Like after that, like he gave it a name, and then it still died.
Antonio
Banderas, yeah. Oh man!
So
that's when we get to the Giant Man.
And that's when he fell off into the water too, because Walton Goggins is on this ferry. He's trying to fly to it. The thing gets eaten, and he just falls into the water with a plop. Yeah. And then the next time we see him, like the ferry guide is telling everybody, "Oh, look, we got a breach over to our right," like they're whale watching. And then Scott just stands up, as Giant Man, and
I like how he's like apologizing. He's like, "I'm sorry, I just need this right here."
Yeah.
And then he pokes him and knocks him down.
But then he still can't shrink at that point, so he's walking back to land with the lab, trying to tell everybody over the comm he's got the lab, but he's losing oxygen real fast because they've talked about how exhausting going into Giant Man is. I think they talked about it in Civil War. Yeah. They definitely talked about it in this movie earlier. Yeah. And so by the time he gets back to land, he sort of drops it and is trying to get everybody to move, and then he just passes out into the water.
Yeah.
And so Wasp has to go down and save him and bring him back up. They've got to get the lab to a spot where they can, which I think everybody clears out and they fully grow it right here.
Well, Ghost does
grows it.
Ghost grows it, and it just in the middle of the city because it just wrecks everything.
I like
how
it's still got its handle.
The handle's still up.
When it regrows.
Yeah. Yeah, because then she goes in and she's the one that pulls Hank and Janet out of the quantum realm, and she's ready to start stealing whatever it is that Janet's got in her that she needs to phase back into reality.
But then Janet just fixes it.
Because then Wasp and Ant-Man come in and they have a little fight scene with Ghost and they stop her, and then Janet and Hank show up, and then Janet's like, "Oh wait, hold on.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, right.
You're fixed now, Ghost." It's super weird, man. Yeah. It's just like,
well, she's not fully fixed.
No, but she's still like, I don't know. She stabilizes.
Oh yeah. Stabilizes her for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know.
I just know later on they talk about going back to get more of the stuff she needs.
The quantum stuff.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
And that's essentially the movie.
Yeah, Scott gets off of house arrest, and everything's happy there.
They did another great scene with Wu where, because Wu says he's like, "Well, I don't know how you did it," because at this point Wu's realized that he's out there running around.
Yeah,
he's trying to track down Giant Man.
Yeah,
and he's tried to track down Giant Man, and when he got to him, it was just the suit, the empty suit, So he goes, he's like, "Well, I don't know how you did it, but you did it, so we're going to let you go, but I'll be seeing you." And Scott's like, "What, are you, asking me to dinner or something?" And Wu's like, "No, when you do something else criminal, I will come catch you. That's what I mean." So that's it, And then he turns around and he stops and he turns back around. He's like, "Did you want to do dinner?"
Yeah.
Because I'm probably free tonight.
So ridiculous. Oh man.
Hank and Janet go to some island and set up their old house.
Yeah.
Which I probably don't need to point out that like houses and buildings need like foundations and specific grading, right? You can't just like put raise and shrink houses wherever you want.
You don't need to point that out.
I've watched them do
right.
it, bro. They obviously can. I saw it happen.
Well,
They had a quantum
if I
foundation.
don't
Quantum foundation. That's the explanation. That's all we need. That's it right there. All right. So then,
Yeah, this movie is hard to talk about.
it really is. It's weird. Like,
I like it, it's a weak link, but it's enjoyable.
You know, like, and I even said the same thing after I got done watching it. Like, there are definitely things in it that I like.
Yeah.
They're obviously setting some things up that are important to the MCU with the quantum realm stuff. They spent a lot of time with it, but they obviously need it for something, which the mid-credit scene, I think, will kind of give us to that a little bit. And you know, I laughed at a lot of the jokes, but otherwise, it just feels kind of there.
Yeah,
it's
pretty
just
forgettable.
it's there. Yeah,
I will see this movie several more times because there will be times where I go, you know what, I'm just gonna I'm gonna run the gauntlet again.
Yeah, I will only ever watch this movie when I run the gauntlet.
You know, but I'll see this movie those times.
Yeah.
I'll see Thor Ragnarok 20 times.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes, exactly. So our mid-credit scene shows us that they have now created a new like quantum accelerator thing or whatever. That's like a smaller one, and it's in the back of Luis's van. And they're gonna send Scott in to bottle up the quantum stuff. I don't know what that is, but that's what they're doing.
Give him like a thermos.
Yeah,
get some.
So he goes in there.
Don't get sucked into a time vortex.
Yeah, and basically like they're all monitoring, and he's gonna go in and he's gonna collect this stuff for their new ghost friend. And then when he's done, they pull him out. That's the way this whole thing is set up. And so he goes in, he bottles it up, and he's like, all right, I'm ready. And then there's no response, basically, on the thing. And then we get the zoom out, and we see dust where everybody was. They all got Thanos.
Yep.
The whole team got Thanos except for Scott, who is apparently now just floating around in the quantum realm, which obviously raises questions for how in the world does he get out of there? Because we've already seen in trailers that he shows up in Endgame, so...
All that time Janet spent in the quantum realm and just to pop out and then immediately lose that lottery.
Yeah, exactly. So...
At the end of that movie, our friend Jacob messaged me. And he was like, man, somebody needs to explain to Marvel what 50% means.
Because all three of them went. And Scott,
well, all three of them go. And we definitely are out of... Like we lose more than 50% of the characters. Mm-hmm. You know? Like, which...
I mean...
So I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
And were we really in that situation and 50% of our friends disappeared, we would feel like more than 50% of our friends disappeared.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I'm fine with it. I'm not complaining. It's just a funny joke.
Well,
that
also,
I mean, with our listeners.
When half of all of existence is wiped out, I mean, even if it's going race by race, because you assume it does, basically planet by planet. Not everything, just...
okay.
just genocide.
Gotcha.
But I mean, you assume you're going planet by planet because that's the whole point is the resources of it. You know, all of us could get wiped out, and it would make total sense with the 50%. You know, so there's no way of saying like it's not 50% of every room, or 50% of every group. It's 50% of humans.
Yeah.
So who knows? You know?
Right.
See that in your face, Jacob.
Dang, John scienced it.
Let's grab lunch.
Yeah.
That is a pretty crushing moment, though. You know, because he's stuck in the quantum realm and then just come back and they're just gone, and just dust. Mm-hmm. And then I really felt the same. Like there was a weight, even though the end credit scene is just the empty house with that ant playing the drums.
Yeah, and like the TV is like, did you notice how like it's like the emergency signal type thing, like the nothing's being broadcast kind of thing is on the TV.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was going to mention was like, even though that's just kind of a funny throwaway, like, hey, look, the ant is still playing the drums.
Yeah.
Like there's like a weight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that just having the emergency tone there, it just like creates this kind of weight. Like, oh man,
Like an apocalypse just
everybody?
kind of happened.
Yeah.
Basically,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah.
like that's crazy.
So
yeah,
that was my favorite part of this movie.
that part. All right. Well, what do you rate Ant-Man and the Wasp then?
Do I have to?
Yes. Nothing.
It's-
You haven't given
it's
any
a
of them
non-
a nothing
It's a
yet.
non.
That's
it's a
that's
non-
not a 0.
Yeah, it's
You gotta
it's still higher.
discern there.
It's still higher than Thor and Iron Man, Thor 2 and Iron Man 2.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well,
It's
there
just,
you
it's
go.
just a non quantity. It doesn't get anything.
Quantum-y?
Quantum. Quantum zero.
Oh, goodness. All right.
It's 3 time vortexes.
Anything else to add? Final
Don't
thoughts? I
No.
think we've said all we can say
Yeah.
about
That's
Ant-Man
all we
and the
can say
Wasp.
about that one, man.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you on that. All
It's
right.
all we can say about that one. Somebody should have said it happy.
There you go. Keep it cheery. Keep it happy. Because we've only got one more movie left to discuss before we get to sit down. Endgame. That's amazing. It's so amazing. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the podcast. There's several different platforms available. Our video version can be found on YouTube. Just do a search for the Geek Easy Podcast and hit that subscribe button. If you're an audio podcast person, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, Podbean, or your preferred podcasting app. So follow us, rate us, review us, and stay tuned because Captain Marvel is next. Booyah.
The Geek Easy Podcast is a production of PixelDan.com. Musical tracks used in the intro and outro are used with full permission of the respective owners or creators. Intro and outro narrations are provided by me, Brian T. Stevenson. PixelDan.com's The Geek Easy Podcast is provided for entertainment purposes only. The views expressed are those solely of the hosts or guests and do not necessarily represent those of PixelDan.com or any other party. Be sure to join us next time for another installment of the Geek Easy Podcast.